Talk about independence. It's certainly what Bernie Sanders talked about, talking about the fact that 3 million New Yorkers didn't vote, and saying that if he were the Democratic nominee, that he had the best chance of beating, for example, Donald Trump, because of all the independents that could vote in November that haven't been able to vote in closed primaries. I wanted to turn to Senator Jerry Ortiz-Pino. You are a Bernie Sanders supporter. Why?
That's one of the reasons right there, that if you take a look at the electorate that's going to vote in November, it's very different from the electorate that's been voting in these primaries. It will include those 50% independents. It'll also give people that are part of the Green Party, the Socialist Labor Party, all the fringe parties, a place to vote as well. And that, I believe, is one of the reasons why in the national polling, yes, Hillary Clinton does outpoll Trump, and she does outpoll Cruz, but Bernie Sanders outpolls him by a wider margin because you're getting a bigger slice of the American pie, and when that American voice speaks, I think it speaks with a voice that sounds very much like Bernie Sanders. Its priorities are those that Bernie has made his priorities.
Which are what? What is it that appeals to you?
Well, I think that, you know, when he speaks about how our country has become very much of an oligarchy rather than a democracy, that its political processes are serving the top 5 or 1% even, rather than the 95%, that resonates. People can look around them and see that, yes, the chief executive of their company now makes 10 times more than he did in 2007, but I'm making, 14 cents an hour more. That really does resonate with people. They don't think they think the game is rigged, and when he speaks about trying to put the burden on those who can most bear the burden, they recognize that right now they're the ones that are bearing the burden, and that's not a fair system.
Former Lieutenant Governor Dianne Dennis, you were a superdelegate for Hillary Clinton in 2008?
Yes, I was.
And not now, though? No,
I'm not a superdelegate this year.
Why do you support Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders?
Well, like many women, we understand that women's economic security and a family's economic security is dependent on women being able to make their own health choices, have opportunities, have equal pay for equal work over a lifetime. To impact their Social Security benefits. So as through the years, many of us, I'm a middle-income American, and we all understand unequal pay. And we agree with Bernie Sanders that the game is overbalanced in terms of the 1% or those people. But I think what we understand is that she is actually, much like these primaries, she has a plan to win the primaries and become the nominee. She has a plan to fight for equal pay and make it actually happen, and she's done it in the past. She has a plan to make sure that we are creating jobs. And while she's not attracting big crowds, like she doesn't campaign in the same way. Yesterday, she wasn't in a crowd of 20,000. She was at a steel plant in Indiana talking to workers about what is really happening in this country.
Do you think Bernie Sanders has heavily influenced her campaign and her positions, even changing them?
I think it's been a great debate, and I think they've influenced each other. And yes, I believe that as time goes on, and the American people have been electing nominees. Now we're going to elect a president. And they want substance, and they want people who can say how they're going to actually get the job done and know that they can go into that office and be ready to face the challenges of the world.
And those who say that Hillary Clinton is too close to Wall Street, too cozy with Wall Street's paid, more than $200,000 for a speech from Wall Street, will not release the transcripts of that speech.
Well, I think one of the most interesting things about that debate is the reason we know about Hillary's fees from Wall Street is because she's released 30 years of tax returns, unlike her opponent, Bernie Sanders, who has failed to release his tax returns. But the fact is that Wall Street is a part of America's economy. It needs to be reined in. She's worked very hard on Dodd-Frank. We have the tools in place now to face executive pay in a way that never before. Stockholders are paying more attention to what's happening. Pension funds across the country, where people have millions and billions invested, are paying attention to Wall Street, and I think that effort will continue to rein in Wall Street and that she will lead that charge.
And Jerry Ortiz-Pino, are you satisfied with that?
Well, I mean, I think it's important that this debate continue. I mean, one of the things that would bother me a great deal is if the calls for Bernie Sanders to stop running now because he doesn't have an arithmetic chance of winning, that he would heed those. I don't think he will. He knows that the important thing is to keep the pressure on and to keep raising these issues. He has been a voice that has consistently said, throughout his senatorial tenure and in all of his public appearances during this debate season, this election season, that this is the #1 issue. And I can only, recall Bill Moyers a few years ago just kind of throwing his hands up in despair over the conversion of our democracy to an oligarchy, where money controls elections. And if you don't have the money, you can't be a player.
Why do you think Bernie Sanders doesn't resonate more in the Latino and the African-American community, but very much so with blue-collar whites, certainly with young people across the board?
Well, I think it's just familiarity. It's just he's represented a state where there wasn't a great Latino population, and so he hasn't been as visible in that community as Hillary Clinton and her association with her husband as former president was. But I think when people do listen to him, and when he's had a chance to meet with them, there's been a great resonance and a great consonance in their views.
We have to break again, but we're going to come back to this conversation. We're speaking with two state senators, Jerry Ortiz-Pino, Democrat, and Sue Wilson Befford, a Republican. Also the former lieutenant governor of the state of New Mexico, where we are right now, Dianne Dennish, and the two-time Republican governor of New Mexico, Gary Johnson, who's now a libertarian candidate for president.